Turning off my AC. Really don't want to. Curtis might pass out because he didn't even have AC to begin with. See how that rhymed?
So hot.
It's not a great song.
That rhyme was hot. That was a hot rhyme.
Yeah, it was. Dude, you can't say that. That's trademarked. Paris Hilton.
Hot rhyme?
No,
I didn't know
that's
that.
hot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Man, she must really sue a lot of news channel stations.
Yeah, that's true. Like the weather people, she's like, you can't say that.
Yeah.
You can't say
Hot. So a couple announcements, ladies and gentlemen. It's about 130 degrees in my attic right now, which is where I'm, or loft, which is where I'm currently recording. And I do have some ice water, but I forgot to turn the projector off over the past 3 days, and it's just been like pumping heat with the door closed up here, and my desktop's been on, and it's wildly hot. It's wildly hot. So now I currently have 2 ice packs, one under both of my armpits right now. I'm not sure if you guys can see these because they're kind of blending in, but they are.
Wait, hold on.
Allowing me to function.
What is that circle one? Is that for your hemorrhoids or?
See this?
It does. It looks like a hemorrhoid one or something.
That would be a massive hemorrhoid.
Look at that. Well, it's for when you have problems. They come in multiple sizes, right?
Ice packs for all shapes and sizes. Classic.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man. Oh. Well, I gotta tell you something. When I hear that intro, Jordan, I kind of feel like I'm getting like a shot of caffeine or
I do
adrenaline.
Too. When I hear it, I'm like, ooh, here we go. It's going. We're gonna do this.
Good feel.
And sometimes I don't even know what I'm gonna say or what you're gonna say.
Yeah. 90% of the time, we don't know probably what we're gonna say, right?
We have
know
like
a little
in
bit.
front of us what we would like to talk about,
right.
But
outline.
We don't always get there.
Totally.
There's sometimes where we just stop on one link, and I'm like,
that's true.
What do I put in the notes this week? This one link.
Guys, we're at an episode 105 now. How wild is that? 105.
Yeah, I was awesome. looking through the past ones, like when we were like just in your old garage, and can you imagine how hot it would be in there right now? It'd probably be just as hot as where you're at right now, if not worse.
Yeah, probably worse even.
That place got either too cold or too hot. It was never in between.
Dude, the days when it was cold when we were in there, we had to have the bump in the space heater and that.
Yeah, and just like
that was frigid.
It's like we should have just started a fire. Like that's what we should have done. It's just had a camp.
And remember, dude, you remember how we ran that Cat 5 through the attic from the outside of the house to have an extra line out there?
Yeah, it was delightful. It was great.
Now that I think about it, when I moved, I don't think I ever disconnected that Cat 5. Did I when I moved?
Hmm?
You did? Oh, I couldn't remember if I disconnected that. So they don't have an extra line. They probably would have liked to have an extra line out there. I should have thought about that.
Well, that main one I think we did run. I don't remember. Yeah, we did a lot of weird things. It was fine. I mean, it worked great. But yeah. Anyway.
It was a good first ghetto setup. It was great.
Dude, it's been so speaking of ghetto setups, yesterday was Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there who find yourself in a fatherly situation. I was going to not do much, and my wife just requested that I go get gas for her, and I stepped into my garage, and water dropped on my head, and I thought, that's weird. That shouldn't be happening. And I looked up, and I was like, that's not good. And so a tree hit our house, and it made it very easy to inspect inside the ceiling, and found out that our dishwasher had sprung a leak. Good thing it was just fairly recent, and it had just done it, and our flooring in our kitchen is like solid plastic. So it went around the edge to right where the line for the fridge comes in.
Oh, yeah.
And just went down and only went about, I don't know, like 2.5 feet to the garage beam, and then was dripping. So it only went like that far. It's already dry. Like put fans on it and everything, and it's already dried out and fine. But what had happened was whoever decided to remodel our kitchen shouldn't have, and had put cupboards in but didn't block off the cupboard that was next to the dishwasher. And so there's a hole, and when you would put things into that back storage, it would fall onto the dishwasher.
Oh,
and because of that, with the heat and the extra weight, and then just dissipate it, not letting the heat dissipate, it had warped it and broke the seal on the dishwasher and was like spraying water up into the shelves and then onto the floor and then into the garage. So it had just done it over time. And anyway, so today I had to go get a dishwasher and reinstall a dishwasher.
Oh my gosh. So you it was like, nah, we can't get a seal. This is like, you got to replace the whole unit.
Oh no, yeah, it was nearly busted all the way like around. Like it was a stainless steel,
no.
and you could see where it had like set up against the insulation and had melted, because it had sat and built up heat. And it was just like there was like lids and things that I didn't know where they had gone. They just it was like, did somebody put them in the dryer? But no, apparently dishwashers have the same magical abilities that dryers do, and they can make kitchen utensils disappear too. Because I found like a stack of lids and like a rolling pin and a bunch of other stuff that had fallen back there because whoever put these cupboards in didn't, like, it's into a corner and they didn't block off the shelves falling off next to the dishwasher.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's a bummer, man. Where'd you get a new dishwasher at?
Funny story, like everything else right now, it's really hard to find dishwashers that are like good. So finally, after poking around, I found one at Lowe's and was able to get one.
Nice. Well, I bought a cheap fridge from Home Depot about a year ago. It was about around $200, I believe, for that fridge. Just a little garage fridge, you know. And it hasn't worked for about the last 2 months. And tried to see if it was like the condenser, and I was thinking like, okay, I could hire somebody and maybe come out and fix it, but the cost of them, like their time and just the piece, is basically the same amount as the fridge itself.
Yeah.
So I was like, I couldn't fix it for cheaper than $200. I was like, son of a gun.
I had a fridge repair guy come out like a ton of times right after we got our house because it was like under the home warranty, and he named off like all the compressors that just got pushed off to like China and weren't made in the US anymore and were super bad. And apparently it's worth spending a little extra to get the ones with the good compressors.
Yeah.
Also, I would say, for those of you out there, I'm not a big fan of extended warranties, but there are two that I can think of in the kitchen that I get extended warranties on. One of them is a fridge. Or wait, no, not in the kitchen. A fridge and washing machines. They both get just hammered with use. Yeah. And what's cool, I didn't know this for a while, but Lowe's, on theirs, if you don't end up using it, you get half of it back when it expires.
Oh, that's cool. That's nice.
So,
yeah, I'm a huge fan of warranties on utilities like that. I've learned that over years as well. It's hugely advantageous. Okay, so something I think I really wanted to get your opinion on, and I wanted to get our audience's opinion on. I know it's a rare night to be recording, but guys, we are moving to Monday night. So if you're listening to this post podcast, this is kind of our night we're going to be transitioning to. Interesting topic that you guys will probably want to be involved in is Oregon has passed a bill.
You drinking coffee?
No, it's water. It's ice water.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're
My
warm.
gosh. I could pass out.
Yes.
Any moment, ladies and gentlemen. So just be ready for that because it's scalding hot up in my loft right now. No, Oregon is passing a controversial bill lately. And it's a law that's banning love letters during home sales. They're calling them love letters, right?
Right.
But essentially, and Annie and I did this actually on one of the houses that we bought. Is you put in your offer and then you have your agent give that letter to the seller, and then your seller can kind of decide, if they want to read it, if they don't want to read it, whatever. But it kind of gives you an advantage. But for some reason, okay, I have some ideas about this.
I do too.
The law passed based on the pretense that it puts people at like social disadvantages, like basically in the respect of like, if people can't read or write that good, they're at a disadvantage because they don't have that good of a letter.
Shouldn't you not be buying a house?
Right. Is essentially what the rule is. But granted, like I think it's putting people at more of a disadvantage if they're even if their socioeconomic is at a lesser,
Yeah.
if they can't offer as much, they can at least write a letter saying, "Hey, I grew up in this really disadvantaged way. Is there any way you could have empathy for me? I love your home. This is how much I can afford." Like it
Right.
puts people, it gives them an advantage versus taking a powerhouse player that has full cash offer that's not going to require an inspection
Right.
and just being like, "Hey, I'm going to pay everything because I'm super rich." Like
Well,
that doesn't give anybody an
so
advantage.
that's my thought. Is that that's what it's doing? So the people that you got to think about, the people that are making these laws, generally they they're supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. They're really none of
Yeah.
those. A lot of them, at least. I mean, there are some I think that truly
My
embody
buddy
that.
Don Bennett was saying, yeah, he did the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I
a
mean,
lot
we
of
did
people
it,
do.
and we had people for us write them, and it was great. Like it was like, oh, okay, like you're leaving a home, and you're like, you feel good about it if it's like, in our case, it was like, hey, this is our first home. Like
Yeah.
this is where we're at. This is the kids that we have. This is what we hope to accomplish, and change and make a, give them a yard and all. It's like all these sweet things. It's like that was nice. We did the same thing with ours, explaining like, hey, we've got these 4 kids. We're in a small house, and we'd like to be in a larger one. And your place looks great.
Mhm.
We want to fix it up. Um, I think it removes the advantage of people being real and being transparent, because otherwise you usually don't see or hear from the people that you're doing. There's always these mediators that do everything for you. I think it gives the big money more of an advantage, because then you don't know.
So here's the conspiracy behind this whole law, which on so many levels, I think it's a travesty. It's like a legitimate infringement on freedom of speech,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Like it's baffling how awful this law is. But on top of that, the guy that was the proponent of it was a Oregon senator who is a realtor himself. And the reason realtors don't like this, and specifically, not all realtors, right? Like some realtors,
Right.
is it puts potentially somebody at an advantage of having to buy the house for less, right? So a commission, where does the commission go? If a realtor sells a house for less money, their commission is less, right? So there's
Yeah.
no advantage in their situation to having this love letter if you're a seller realtor. If you're a buyer realtor, perhaps there's a bit of an advantage. But when you're selling a home, that you don't want your people to sell it for less, right? Unless it's like outpriced.
So
Um,
I would say that based on this, it doesn't ban them per se.
are you sure?
Yeah. So it says, and I had heard this too, but I was just reading through it as you were saying that. It
Yeah.
it what this bill would do is give the sellers agents the ability to reject the letters. So I think now they can't,
Mm.
and so the seller's agents can reject those letters. So a bunch of comments are saying like, "Hey, if an agent does that, don't work with them because clearly they don't care about people." Because
Yeah.
so the bill was put forth as helping to avoid buyer selection based on race, sex, or religion in violation of the federal fair housing laws, which I don't think it's ever done that, because even in the letter that we gave, it didn't. None of that was there. We didn't say that we were white.
Yeah.
We just said we have kids. It was a
Why,
giant house.
how
If we didn't,
sketchy would that be if in your letter you're like, "Hey, we're a white family
right?
between the ages of 30 and
Yeah.
20, and we have
Last
this much
four of our
wealth." Like,
social is like, you don't. Yeah. No, that's not. I think that we're onto something, and that this is to not only give advantage to the selling agent to boost the price, but I think it also allows big money to swoop in and look like a family, but they don't have to then write a letter, because if they don't, they'd have to lie if they sent a letter
yeah.
in.
And
So
nobody said you have to write a letter
no,
anyways. Now,
no.
what I
But in
guess what
today's
you were
market,
saying,
I can guarantee you it helps, because there's like a lack of homes. So people are like,
I
you know,
I think it'd be interesting to talk to a realtor and hear their perspectives on this. Um, Pertaining to, actually, we both know a couple of realtors, obviously,
I've talked to one of
but
them, but I won't mention them by name, that said they're actually
yeah.
really helpful for people especially in a
No,
situation where
about
you
this
get,
bill.
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, they're saying that they don't like this because it is helpful to people, especially when you get like 20 different offers. You're like, who do I deal
Right.
with? So what it does help you do is, and this goes for any sale. If you were to sell something and look people in the eye, that was going to be hard. Like say you're selling a car or whatever. Not only does like you want to get the best price out of it as possible, but also you want the least amount of friction possible. So if
Yeah.
you find out like, oh, this person like they're not in a great like financial situation, and it's not your call whether or not they get the house or not, but what that can hold up the lending, it can hold up the process, and if you're trying to move, it benefits you to have somebody that has a quick sale. So you find out, oh, they're upgrading homes or they're not upgrading homes. If they are, and that's contingent on their home selling, things like that.
Right.
That's good information to have to make a wise sale so that your life can be easier as you move on, because everyone's trying to move homes at that point and it's already as stressful as possible. It's like, what is it, like number 2 most stressful thing that people do is buying and selling a home? Like,
Well, speaking of like homes and like payments and wanting things to go quick, um,
I'm really
you know,
curious
out the transition
what
outside of
what
that, like
transition you're building out of that.
not so much with buying homes, but
Mm-hmm.
with renting homes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the interesting new development in California. Oh, hold on a second. Let's see. My cousin was saying that when she was shopping for a house a few years ago, she wrote a letter to the seller. It didn't help her case, but it did for a friend of hers. She didn't get the place, but a better one showed up 7 months later. Yeah. So I mean, I
Yeah,
think if it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt, but it can usually at least
I
it
would
hurts you
say
if you
you
don't,
definitely
right?
could hurt yourself by it
I guess
sending
you
the
could.
wrong
I
letter.
guess you could.
Like some
I guess
people,
you
you're
could.
probably better off not sending that letter. Like,
Or it also depends on your letters like
yeah,
I can't wait to own your house and sit on a throne of lies or
mm-hmm,
something like
yeah.
ridiculous,
I think
right?
the best way to write a letter to somebody for their house is with newspaper clippings and magazine letters. Like, yeah, I can't
Oh,
wait
that's hilarious.
to be in your house and find out about you.
I can't wait to be in your house and terrorize every neighbor. um okay, so but did you hear what's going on in California recently? So, and this is actually kind of it's interesting because it's kind of a good thing for landlords and for realtor or for people that own properties that are in a lot of debt now because the renters couldn't pay, right? And that's been going on for over a year now. So California passed a bill that they're going to pay off all past due rent accrued during COVID-19, which is going to give the renters a clean slate, but it's also going to allow the landlords, and this is who I have a little bit more empathy in this situation because they aren't necessarily getting their mortgage companies to be like, hey, we're not going to make you pay, right? Like they still owe that mortgage.
Yeah.
But this is interesting because it's the Congress approved a aid package to California for like $5.2 billion or something like that, and about 490 of it was supposed to go to rental assistance. And so far, the state has given about like 32 million. So they're saying with the remaining amount, we should be easily able to cover all of our remaining landlord rental fees, but then you have to sponge basically all the renters from their debts, which is an interesting thing because it's like I'm not totally sure how I feel about the whole situation. Like, I wanted to get your thoughts and opinions on it. Anybody that's listening, like, I'm not sure because I do feel for those landlords. Like, oh my gosh, like their mortgages are like
So
killing them right now.
on one hand, I do feel like there's a lot of people who are just like, they're like basically what I would consider to be like retail landlords. Like they're not a big firm or anything like that.
Yeah.
I actually was I went to the event that Stan Pulliam, the guy who's like considering running for mayor, or not for mayor, for governor in Oregon. And there was a lady that spoke up and said, "What do you plan to do for the landlords?" The same question that have this. She
Yeah.
said, I think she said she had 10 to 12 properties of her own, just homes that she rented, and 8 of them were had stopped paying as soon as they were told that they didn't have to for COVID. But
Mm.
of all the 8, every single one of them did not lose their job. They continued to be employed, and she knew that based on information she had from them. And they were just taking advantage of it. So while I want the landlords, the problem is they shouldn't have done this. They should have approached this in a different way. They put the problem on the owner in the beginning when it should have been it should have been the state that if they really had this, like, and they really wanted to pay for the rent, they shouldn't have put that on the back of the landlord to begin with. I would say the same thing about all these rules about masks and stuff like that. They put all those rules onto these business owners to enforce and made them the police. They made everyone else the bad guy and didn't actually take it upon themselves. Whereas, like, yeah, I want the landlords to, like, make it and not be under because the state decided to do something dumb like this. But what I think they should do is that they should take some of those funds and investigate who did or didn't lose their job and didn't pay their rent and go after them to find them to repay the state. Because that's state taxpayer money. You're taking that from other people to then, like, expunge them. How about this? They could make a caveat that says we're paying off the landlords and you can have your record wiped clean if you can come to us and prove that you were not employed during this time when you didn't pay. Otherwise, your record is not clean.
Yeah, I think...
Because it was... I mean, that's pretty big for that
it's
one
kind of
lady
like the
to have 8
IRS,
out of 10
right?
people.
Like, I think it'd be kind of like unemployment, right? Like when you are on unemployment, you have to show that you have been searching for a job. You have to have some type of responsibility still. And so I think if there was a measure of responsibility connected to that rent relief, you know, I think that makes sense. But I don't think that the landlords or whomever that was carrying the mortgages should be held responsible as well.
That part
though.
I
I'm
agree
not
with,
sure.
but just like wiping it and saying you give them a free and clear time, I'm not for that. I say don't make the landlords pay for, I would consider this to be all the state's mistakes for doing it this way. Don't make them pay for your mistakes, but don't just wipe the people's slate clean. Make them prove it like they would for, like you said, like for unemployment or whatever. Because if they can't, then put it on their record.
The hard part is to prove something post hoc. Like it would be easier to make someone.
You just go look at their income. Like if you were making,
like if they had an income.
If they were making income during that time, and it didn't change significantly at all, then put it on their record that they were defunct for a year and didn't pay it, so that it's on their rental record, so they can't rent a place anymore. That's their fault. Unless they pay the money back to the state.
Or they would have, that's what I would say. Or they have to do some type of payment plan, like taxes, basically, right? Because it is essentially, it's a government bailout. Yeah, because
until this lady was talking about that, I didn't know. I just would assume some people would probably take advantage of that if there was nothing to do you had to do to prove it. But she was saying like 8 out of 10 of her rentals. So that's 80% that she's been dealing with for over a year of people not paying. I
think also, though, I'd be curious to see it. I mean, I also, anytime I see like a bailout like this, even like essentially like all of the bailouts, like the small business loan bailouts and the bailouts that went towards just like every person in general, right? I have so much hesitation because I feel like there's so much rampant like abuse of the system that anytime I see additional bailouts, it just makes me nervous in general.
I wondered this too, and I heard someone say this is like, instead of just sending everyone money, why not just tell them that you're not collecting income tax?
Ooh, what? Right? They were going to do that. They were debating doing that instead of giving stimulus.
Right, exactly. So why not do that versus a stimulus? Because all the stimulus, it was tons of pork to other things, and then some to the people. I mean, it was
because in that though required them to have that's why, because it required them to have an income to have any advantage out of it, right?
Yeah, right. So the real reason is because the government makes money off of inflation, and they don't want to tell anybody that. And it's really, if me giving everyone $2,000 costs them like $40,000 over an extended amount of time because of costs going up and things. So all of a sudden
Mm.
you get more money and you're like, oh, that's cool. But then gas goes from $1.30 a gallon to $3.30 a gallon, and the price of food goes up by 25% in just a few months. So
Well, inflation in general, though, obviously we've already started to see a bit of inflation going on. Um, it will be interesting to see how long it takes for the interest rates to start matching inflation, because they
yeah,
haven't really adjusted interest
they
rates
there
as
was
of
an
yet,
interest
as far
rate
as I'm
calling this
aware.
week. They talked about it. I think they're being a lot more cautious, I think, to name it, but it's coming. Like it will be coming. And that drove markets down, and you could see a little bit of the fear showing up in there, and is hopefully, hopefully it doesn't go that way, but it doesn't look great. You don't spend $6 to $8 trillion and not pay for it in some way. Like
Well, I heard also that student loan rates. I heard that student loan rates are going to actually go. Interests are going to be going up as well. So,
it has
like
to go
how
up
we have,
everywhere.
like
Like you
right,
have to, like
which is kind of like, ooh, because right now, isn't it zero? Like, there's no interest on loans right now.
right,
Like the federal government, I think they made all loans be 0%. I think, right,
pretty
on
close, yeah.
student loans.
Well, and here's the thing: is like we've talked about this before when it comes to things like, say, marijuana or any other controlled substance. Name that. Like, oh, I wish we could look in the past and see what happens when you regulate something. So we have the prohibition that we could look at for that. For this, we have the late '70s, early '80s to look at to see what it looks like. And I've talked to people that said I thought it was a great deal when I got a 20% interest loan on my home. Like first home they
Oh
bought
yeah, yeah,
was
yep,
20%. I mean, like now we're just like, oh my gosh, I have 2.5, I have 2.4 or 2.3, 2%. Like,
yeah.
and that's going to be a thing of the past. If yeah, it's just going to be. I
Well,
don't know
I
that there's
remember
anything you're going to stop it now.
my dad talked to me about how when he bought their first house, it was like it was about a close to a 20% interest
Right.
rate, but also like the house is, like, I don't know, $70,000 was like
Yeah,
a really
but
nice
but
house back
money
then,
was
right?
like it was different because we hadn't had the inflation that we do now. Like a dollar was worth more than versus now. And you can look at that in like real life things, like how much food costs, how much energy costs, how much fuel costs, like all those types of things. So a dollar went a lot further back then than it does
Oh,
now.
can I make a prediction
Go for it.
for anybody out there that likes to play the market a little bit, dabble in the market? I foresee, as the world returns increasing in normal activities, businesses start getting back to traveling more, people start getting back to vacationing more, more kind of transport starts taking place. I think oil prices are going to go, oil stock prices are going to go way up. And I think that the value of that would be something. Right now they haven't jumped a ton yet, but I do think that there's a supply issue right now. It's not actually, there is some supply issues. Obviously, the whole Canadian, oil line that got messed up, but there is a little bit less supply issue right now as well. So I predict oil prices are going to boom come this within the next 6 months. I would wager. I could be wrong, but
They already
I've
kind
I've
of
been
have.
kind of looking into this, and I think they're going to keep booming.
Yeah.
I think they're going to boom.
I think
Um,
electric will too. I mean, I think GE generally is
mm,
undervalued right now.
yeah, yeah,
But
way undervalued. Yep. So getting back to California, something interesting pertaining to, not necessarily bailouts, but kind of tied to this, right, is Mr. Newsom,
yeah.
governor, right? And I was thinking about this because we had talked previously about how Governor Newsom was going to be having this recall election. They had enough votes for it to kind of go through.
More than enough.
But right now the issue is both sides are kind of battling for when the recall election is actually going to take place, because there's a lot of interesting dynamics to this, and be interesting to hear your thoughts on this. So each side is kind of pushing for different things. So the Newsom side, which is interesting, is actually pushing for the elections to happen
Oh
sooner
yeah, of
than
course.
later.
Why not?
And but here's why it's kind of a little bit at his disadvantage. There's actually pros and cons to it. So if he's going to rush, if the election gets rushed, to his opponent's side, it gives them an advantage of them being able to advertise for themselves and being able to get their names out there and be able to kind of like say like, hey, this is who I am, right? On Newsom's side, the disadvantage is right now, and I didn't know this, but I was looking up some stuff. Apparently, his ranking or whatever you call it, his polling, yeah, rating has been going up, and they're saying they're connecting it to like the post-COVID situation. Basically, they're saying the state's kind of opening back up. His ratings are going back up as well. So there is kind of like this double-edged sword of like, if he waits longer, will it stick, right? Will his polling go up? If also the issue that the polling companies are saying is the reason they can't do the election right away, because they were supposed to do it like August 24th, and now they're saying we need to do it September like 10th, or I'm not sure, sometime in September.
The Constitution probably dictates how long they have before they have to do it. I think it has to happen within a certain amount of time.
Yeah. But they could have done it between August and September, essentially. But the issue is also they're trying to send out ballots, and they say we're not going to be able to get all these ballots made and sent out. So then have
people come in with IDs and prove that they can vote and vote.
Well, and I think in his situation, but his disadvantage, like he wants to do it right now. Yeah. So if he does it right now, he potentially limits the amount of people that he could get voting for him, right? So it's a double-edged sword.
I honestly don't give
totally
that guy much clout.
What's going to happen?
I don't think he's going to win. I think the reason why they're trying to do it.
You think?
I think the reason they're trying to do it.
You think Kate's going to win?
Yeah.
You think she's going to win?
Yeah.
Really? I haven't actually looked at polling numbers to see like who's up higher. Yeah. Let's see. Governor runoff, California. Let's see. Polling. This will be fascinating to see what the polls are saying.
And it would be kind of hilarious because
would it be technically for 2022?
No, it's partial. So it just depends on their constitution what it means. Like if it's a full term, if it's not a full term counts as like a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like if at least federally, like say you get appointed to presidency, if it's less than a certain amount of time, it doesn't count. You can still have 2 terms. Like, and those rules have changed.
Oh, okay.
Years. So that's why like Kate Brown could run twice.
So actually, yeah, it's looking like his actually ranking is polling at least so far. When is this from? This is from like.
It's because of the things that it's because of the things being said. It's just honesty, and I think that's what nobody has caught on to yet. Is that blunt honesty wins. It doesn't matter if you're mean or not, as long as you're sane and you're honest and transparent about your thinking. That wins most people's hearts over.
Well, and that's kind of honestly, Caitlyn does that.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
She's pretty honest.
What do you think about transgender in sports?
Right.
Don't do it. They should have something, but doing that gives people an unfair advantage, and I should know. I competed, and I wouldn't want to give myself that advantage.
She kind of comes at it from an interesting perspective, right? Like she kind of has the most background and knowledge as far as professional athletics go in that type of field.
And that was interesting is people are like, well, let's just see what they say. Like, because they didn't know what the opinion would come out as, but when it did, they were like, oh, well, that's actually kind of interesting. Nobody tried to put words in mouths or anything, but it was just like, we'll see. And as soon as like the honesty came out and they doubled down on it, then
May, June. See if you can find. I'm trying to find the most recent Caitlyn Jenner polling. In May, she was polling at 13%, I think, of like people had voted. Like, say, at 13% would go for her, which is actually, if she had only been saying she was gonna run for a couple weeks or for a month or two at
honestly,
that point, that's actually
it could have been anyone. Like it's someone that people would know. I at first I was like, that's a little too radical for most people, but it is California, and if they come out and have conservative type views, people are kind of edging towards that, even in California, because they're like, I just want to be left alone, and clearly that's not the case. Clearly we got locked down. We're one of the 4 that were the lockdown the worst, and we have 650,000 people on average leaving our state per year because they're so irritated with the way that the state's running things. We need to get back to people that are just going to leave us alone and let us do what we want. Like, even in California, that's what they're wanting. So
some people, yeah.
I'm
Some
saying,
people.
like,
I think
as a
California.
majority, that's where most people are at. They're like,
Yeah,
just leave me alone.
I
Let me
think
live my life.
California. I think California is a really, obviously it's. Is it the largest state, or Texas is the largest
Well,
state?
by landmass, but as far as like people in it, it's like the 3rd largest economy or something on the planet. Like,
Right.
it's
It's wild.
huge. It is.
It is crazy how such a big state was one state. Like, it
It
could
is.
easily be 3
It
states,
is
right?
now way past the percentage that we have formed new states before, that we have divided up and created new states. There are weird constitutional things that would have to change to do it to land that already was a state, but by population and everything, it's gotten to the point where there's like 3 states that are basically countries within our country that really could
Right.
be, they're totally entirely separate different economies that could be their own state. Um,
Well, even Oregon was in the throes of a vote, right? Like, I don't know if it actually got
it
enough
was like
votes to be on the
7,000
petition.
short.
Was it? Oh, it didn't make it?
Well, it's
Okay, so
controversial. I don't know a lot of information about it, but I know people that were involved in the recount and collecting of signatures, and they said we had it. And
oh,
it
interesting.
was.
Well, they were, so for those listening on that are on the podcast, they had a vote that they were trying to get into the Senate to divide. Essentially, it was like basically all of Eastern Oregon and
That's
like
not what I meant.
part
That's
of
I was talking about our
part.
governor getting.
Oh, no, 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 no. Sorry, I'm talking about
No,
Oregon.
that
They were in
that
a
would be
throes of trying to get our state separated and added onto
that would be
Idaho.
really hard. I don't think it's. I don't think it's like. I wouldn't say anything is impossible. Um, but that would be difficult, although not largely unheard of. Part of it that would make sense is parts of Oregon that are like not even in our time zone. Like they're technically like they're everything they do is in Idaho. They're just somehow live
Right.
right over the border. But there are a lot of like rural areas that have larger cities and larger populations that really are controlled by populations that don't have their best interest in mind, and they don't actually get a
What's
say. So
what's the name of that town that's super close to Idaho? It's is it Joseph?
I think so.
Is it? It's like it's surrounded. It's supposed to be like beautiful. Ken always
Dude,
talked
that
about it,
place
like
is
surrounded by
amazing. It's
mountains.
so cool.
Have you been there?
I've driven through
I
it.
really want to make a trip. I want to make a trip there because I hear it's like a really nice
It's
town,
like
like kind of out in the
it
woods in the
is.
mountains.
It's and you like when you drive out of it, it's like driving through this canyon. It's pretty cool.
That's dope. That's awesome. So not to be too long-winded, one other thing I wanted to hit on was a really kind of fun space story. Not really a story, but
Story.
scientific
Fact.
study.
Studies.
Fact. Science. Um, but
I want to know
it was
who did
interesting.
this.
Well, it was a joint
Okay.
effort. It was a joint effort. Um, but it was took place in the actual International Space Station. Okay. Um,
I mean,
and what they did
I guess I
was
don't really. I don't understand why this wouldn't work, and we haven't told anyone what we're talking about yet. But it's just,
okay.
yeah.
So here's what's going on. There's been concerns that if humans try to move planets, right, and we live on Mars or we live on the moon or wherever, there's a higher level of constant radiation exposure that we receive, and there's concern that that
Gotcha.
radiation would cause a significant amount of harm to male sperm, and in doing so, inhibit and prohibit us from being able to reproduce on those planets because the sperm would be so damaged. Okay, so what they did was, and I don't know why they took it seems a little silly. They took rat sperm or mice sperm,
It's always
and
the mice
um,
and rats.
yeah. So they took
I think it's
mouse
because they
sperm, semen.
can't they like there's like some some of them in the treated in a way that their DNA is very human like.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
correlation close enough where they feel like if it's going to happen to a mouse, it's going to happen to a
right.
human. Um, so they took mouse sperm and semen and they put it on the International Space Station, and it was stored on the space station for over 6 years. And that's actually there's no atmosphere up there, right? There's a pretty thin wall, and so essentially the amount of radiation you receive, I think 1 year on the space station is almost like a lifetime of natural environmental radiation
That's
exposure. It's
crazy.
just a lot of radiation, right? Um, which they had a whole documentary about this one guy that spent a year on the space station. Him and his twin. He had a
Oh,
twin
and
on
they
Earth, and they
measure the
studied
telomeres and
pairing.
stuff like that. Yeah, and he was actually
Yeah,
younger.
which is interesting. hmm Um, but anyhow, they found that the sperm living on the space station had little to no damage on the space station. And they actually, this is really crazy. I didn't even know you could do this, but they freeze dried the sperm, which which is wild. So basically they freeze dried the sperm and then they brought them, I don't know, I guess they rehydrated them or something, and the sperm was still
Fine, like swimming.
viable. Yeah, it was still swimming.
Nice.
So and they estimate that the sperm could actually be viable, they think, for probably a few hundred years.
Okay. I mean, I don't know why you want
It's
to store
wild.
it for
It's
that
wild.
long, but
So they're saying like this is like a really encouraging thing because they're thinking like, hey, if we do want to, travel to other planets. Now, granted, they studied sperm, but I'm not seeing anything on here as far as
that
the
was going to
effects
be my
on the
question is
egg,
like on eggs and stuff.
right?
Although to Mars, yes, they have a lower atmosphere until it was terraformed or whatever. But also, it is quite a bit further away as far as like
Mm-hmm.
from the sun's radiation at least. Maybe there's radiation from
Mm-hmm.
other things. Um, but like just space is different. I mean, it's, you go to the expanse, like there's the belters and all that kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
um, which that's an interesting.
Well, it's also interesting because, and they don't really know why, but and there's a link that I can post to this. This is actually kind of an interesting um, finding that they've been seeing in a lot of studies lately.
Right.
Is the average sperm count for Western men has like dramatically been dropping,
I believe it.
like really quickly. Like they're saying between 1973 and 2011, they did a study of a cohort of quite a few different men, and they found that the sperm count has dropped 59%
I believe it. I mean, we
between
are.
1973 and
I
2011.
I personally believe that
59% sperm
one of the
count drop.
reasons why we were, by and large, I think the numbers were exploded more than they were, but regardless of that, why we were like, why are we being hit so hard by COVID? I think it's because we are primarily like
Unhealthy
super
lifestyle
unhealthy
practices.
and obese, and we can't
Yeah.
even say that because it's like bad. It's like
Smoking,
fat shaming. It's
obesity.
like
Yeah.
my latest idea for a business venture would be to pair up doctors and practitioners with a translator who sits next to them, and when they go, you have high blood pressure and your knees hurt, and then the translator says, you're fat and you eat too much. And so the doctor doesn't. So
And
the
then
doctor doesn't have to
I didn't
say it.
say it.
Like, well, he didn't say it. Like, yeah.
I can't get a bad
It looks
score.
like maybe you're not very active and there's too much weight on your joints, Tubbo.
Well,
Like,
it would be really interesting. I wish that they would have taken a study of individuals from multiple regions of the world,
mhm.
populations. Like if they would have had some from, the Amazon, from sub-Saharan Africa to, the Siberia, and like studied the difference in sperm accounts. But they're saying in this study they found that they believe a common thread is a combination of unhealthy lifestyles, like we said, smoking, obesity. But then they're also saying that they think there's a correlation, not necessarily causation, but they think there's a correlation between the chemicals that we're constantly being exposed to, like certain plastics in our foods, in our drinks, makeup, pesticides, that sort of
Well, we
stuff,
have one of the least
which is interesting.
rigorous rules based on our foods that we do accept or put into our
Yeah,
system. Um,
yeah, it's just terrible.
yeah. So.
Like compared to Europe, like they're so like the UK, they're very conscious about they. I think I think they were saying like we have 70% more added chemicals in our foods than what are allowed in the UK.
Oh yeah.
Like
There's
they're saying
tons
like
that we don't
preservatives and
even
everything.
that other countries don't even consider food. Like if it's in there, they can't consider it a food. Yeah, it's quite daunting
It's
if you start
horrifying,
to look at it.
terrifying.
But all that to say, like that would cause more weight issues. It would cause more diabetic issues, which we know can cause that as well.
Right.
And like I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers in a while, but it's kind of staggering if you look at what they estimate the pre-diabetic numbers are for the United States. It's pretty high, like
Mm-hmm.
because of just the amount of like carbs and sugars that is in everything that we push as
Yeah.
healthy. Like look at our food pyramid.
And I
If you
think
ate
I
what
was
the
thinking
food
about
pyramid says to, you're gonna die. Like you're gonna die.
yeah. I think a lot of like it's not even necessarily people's choices as much as it is like I think it's a bit of like what you were saying, like what our government even allows in our
Or just says is
foods.
good. Like do
Um,
this,
yeah,
and like, well, that's not really the answer. Like you can't,
yeah,
like I tell people this all the time, and it's truth is you can't out exercise a bad diet. You just can't.
mm-hmm,
Um,
right. It's pretty wild.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so a
I
couple.
say we do some.
No, hang on. There's a couple things that I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
because
yeah.
we just went through yours. Mine will
Okay,
go real quick. The
okay,
first
hit
thing I
me.
want to show is talk about is just the staggering number. There was an article that you had pointed out in my notes, and you're like, I want to hear about this. And I was like, well, I didn't read about that part as much. But then it turns out I'd actually heard a lot more about it. Is that studies are showing now that 91% of the riots were all tied to Black Lives Matters last year. Probably not super shocking to anyone who watched the news or paid attention to Twitter. But it also that it caused the largest amount annually for damage that was claimed through insurance, which I personally know people that refixed and fixed the same place multiple times due to BLM stuff going on in Portland. So again, that's not super shocking to me. But what is kind of crazy is that of all of 2020, no, there were no there was no damage caused to anything by any Trump rally. But yet, when January 6th happened, that's all we wanted to talk about. And we didn't want to bring up all of the
So
year
you're saying
prior.
excluding
Well, that's
January 6th, there was no
2021.
damage from.
So
Yeah,
all of 2020, nothing happened. And 2021, January 6th, everyone's like, well, Trump caused that. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, back up 2020. Like, let's look at the year prior. And
yeah.
in this
I don't
article,
think
which
that's
I'll post,
surprising.
you could look and see. There's a ton of people that are still in jail in D.C. for having done. And I'm not condoning the people going into the Capitol or having done whatever they did. I've been told by people like, "Oh, I can't believe you were there. You were encouraging it. You could have stopped them." Like, dude, when a million people want to walk into a building, not a million people, I should say, when a few thousand people out of a million people want to walk into a building, there's not a lot that you're going to do to stop them. If the people with tear gas can't stop them, I'm not going to do anything. I just happened to be there and was enjoying my time up until all that happened. Um,
Hmm.
but it is a little lopsided. And speaking of lopsided, the last thing I want to bring up is a picture that I noticed. I thought it was fake. I thought it was just a genuinely great Photoshop. Was a picture that was done on the 16th of June, so 3 days before Juneteenth, which is the day that we celebrate the Republicans releasing the slaves. And I say that kind of in jest, but it is the truth. Was Kamala Harris hosts a dinner party for all the female senators, um, which I don't think they're even supposed to mention gender there. which is interesting. And in the background of her pictures, I'll bring it up here, was you can see she's got mostly white women, which I'm fine with. I'm fine if they want to have a girls' party. I'm not debating that at all. I just think it's kind of funny. I like to point out hypocrisy, although they can have all the parties they want. She's got this guy helping in the background, and then mind you, this is 3 days before the Juneteenth thing, and then she's got a black lady. Those are the only two people that we can see in her photos that are her help at her place, and I just don't know what to think of that.
Yeah, it's not a great look for Kamala. If she has a table full of, I think there's a couple Asian women, but it looks like everyone else is Caucasian. And if it's supposed to
I think there's two
be
Asian women.
Promoting diversity, it doesn't look great that she is advocating in this situation that the only people there worthy of being at her table are not people of diversity or color. That doesn't seem like a great situation to put your your political hat on.
And so, like, full disclosure, like, I'm totally fine if she has those people employed with her and everything. It's just the hypocrisy. Like, I want to point out someone else's hypocrisy for not following their rules. It's not my rules. I'm sure they probably make a great wage, and they probably do really well on that job, and they're super, super thankful for it, and I'm glad that they're there. I'm even glad that they're having this women's party. Like, I don't want to be there. I'm not jealous, like, at all.
And I do want to say a quick throwback to 2020, right? The BLM movements, like you were saying, that was basically all of the protests a majority of the protests that took place in 2020 were BLM protests, right?
I don't know of any others.
They were a powder keg, right? Because there was a precipitating event, the George Floyd's death, right? And that was something I don't think there were any major BLM movements prior to George Floyd's death. There could have been. I just wasn't aware of it. But I think that there was a precipitating event that then catalyzed all of those protests. Whether or not they were then used for nefarious or appropriate protests, that's something for discussion.
And I would
say,
of it. But I don't think all the people that went to those knew or were wanting to be involved in something that was causing riots.
Well, like burning down,
but
buildings
there were
and stuff like
main
that.
people for
raids.
Those things that did call for it and called for. Even Kamala Harris was quoted saying, "I can't believe people aren't doing this more. Get out, be loud." Like.
Yeah, both sides have had silly people saying terrible things, though. In both situations, like after and before June 6th, and then also with the BLM movements, for sure.
The January 6th one? There weren't people calling for that.
Yeah.
Not the leaders of it, I should say.
No. But I'm saying there were
people, but there's
sides.
always crazy people.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there were BLM leaders that were calling for, we need to do this, and like on the record, people like they were organizing, just going in and taking advantage of it. Like there wasn't. I mean, if people can go read this article that talks about the January 6th thing, there is now information coming out now that the FBI was trying to hire special forces people to go in and antagonize the crowd and create that problem on January 6th. That's a big deal. Like,
but there was also people saying that was also happening during BLM movements as well.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that was happening on BLM side as well as during.
I fully believe it's both. It's just to cause division.
Yeah.
And I think that
right. And control.
Division. Well, control is if you can get the people to be enemies with each other, which is like we have CRT, critical racist theory. It just teaches people how to be racist, and it teaches people how to perpetuate racism by teaching them that certain people are always born a certain way. If you deny that you're racist or deny that you have advantage or whatever, then it's just you're part of the problem. Like, well, that's a really bad way to argue, and it just makes everyone enemies. Like that to me, like we all just need to find more common ground and stop listening to the people. That'd be a
really interesting conversation to have and discuss that whole entire theory and the circumstances surrounding it. I'm not saying yay or nay about it either way. I haven't looked enough into it myself, but I think that'd be a really interesting conversation to have and discuss, and maybe even have like a couple other people on here and have that maybe like one that's a real big proponent of it and someone that's opposes it. That could actually be a really fun conversation to have.
It might get kind of heated because most of it's based on what's called the 1619 Project, which is just a giant bunch of lies that actually led up to the whole BLM George Floyd explosion. And calling it the Summer of Love was supposed to be the summer of 400 years. It's time to now take back our freedom because we've been slaves for 400 years. So that's what led to that.
Yeah,
that's when it started.
But somebody might truly believe that, right?
Yeah, that doesn't make it real. That's the problem.
But it doesn't mean it's not for them. Who knows?
No. I'm talking about like concrete history things, like what I said, like Juneteenth. I think it's a good holiday to have. We celebrate the day that Republicans freed the slaves.
That's true. It was Republicans. Yeah, it was Democrats in the South.
Yep.
Okay, let's do shower thoughts.
Let's do it. I was looking at the comments.
Okay, I'll go first. I'll go first. Shower thoughts. I think it's really interesting that a cybersecurity student who can hack into a university's database and give themselves full marks probably should deserve to get full marks. Meaning, like, if a student can hack into a database, right, and give themselves full A's, I think that they should be able to get full A's because they were smart enough to do it.
We had that at school. They just said you couldn't be destructive, but if you could prove that you got in, like, you would get a bumped grade.
That's pretty cool. I had never. That definitely would not have been at my school. They would have kicked you out for sure.
Specifically in the computer department, like they were like, if you can get into this, don't be destructive. We'll get you in trouble. But if you can,
did anybody get into it?
I don't know if anyone did. If they did, they didn't make it public. There were people that definitely could have. Yeah. Are we not doing TILs? Are we done? We're just skipping those.
Oh, you know what? I have TILs. For some reason, we were doing showers first. Totally party foul. My bad.
I'll do a TIL first. You have more than me, but since you just went, I'll talk for a second.
Perfect.
Today I learned that Poland sent the U.S. a birthday card with 5.5 million signatures to mark the 150th anniversary of the U.S. in 1926.
Whoa. That's wild.
I wonder if it was one big card. Like Statue of Liberty, like 1-to-1 ratio. And
that would have been amazing.
Like how many they could fit on it.
That would have been amazing. How many times you'd have to fold that piece of paper to transport it?
No. One big card that fit her size.
Oh, yeah? Oh,
signed with real life signatures.
Okay, so this is somewhere I want to go. This would be really fun, Jordan, because I'm sure you'd like this place. Today I learned of the Heart Attack Grill restaurant in Las Vegas, which serves high-fat and sugar food. Customers wear hospital gowns to eat, and waitresses dressed up as nurses. And customers that weigh over 350 pounds eat for free. There is a fact of history that people have died from cardiac arrest in the restaurant. That's insane. That'd be a really wild place to go.
This is why we have problems. We make that that okay.
Isn't
like
that crazy?
Like that's just wrong. Like if someone
insane.
wants to eat themselves to death, I mean, that's their prerogative, I guess. But creating something that like benefits from killing people, I don't know. Yeah,
it's crazy.
I mean, we do make cigarettes. Right. We do have a sugar industry.
Hit me, TIL.
Today I learned the opening crawl to Star Wars begins with a storybook-esque narration a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, because George Lucas first imagined his films as stories being told by an ancient race of immortals. The immortals were written out for the early films, but this vestige remained.
That's amazing. That's like a Yoda species, maybe.
Oh, maybe. Ooh, that's a good one.
Right? Today I learned over half of all phone calls we receive now are spam.
I believe it.
That's wild.
Email didn't used to be that way, and now we don't check email.
Right.
What are they going to get to?
You got any more TILs?
No, I'm out.
I got one more.
Go.
Okay, today I learned almost 50% of biosolids so human feces in the United States, are used for fertilizers or agriculture. But in Asia, almost 90% of human feces is used for agriculture, mostly on rice field productions.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
It's a lot of poopy rice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of poopy rice.
Rice patties.
Ooh.
Poop patties.
Yeah, rice poopies.
Yeah, rice poopies. Shower thoughts.
Shower.
Burger flipping is a thing where if you do it as a job, it is seen as a failure. But if you do it recreationally, it's seen as a mark of success.
I love that one, and I had the same one. I love that. That's hilarious. And I think there's a lot of other things in life like that, right?
Yes.
Like, if you're good at keeping your floors clean in your house, you're seen as like really studious. But if you do it as a job, you're seen as not successful or something. I don't know.
It's probably because either way you were paying the person to do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You're either being paid or paying someone to make it clean.
Josh Crane says North Korea can put you in jail if you don't turn in your poop.
That's
Maybe.
actually probably
Maybe.
true. They can put people in jail for
surprised.
something that someone else did. So
yeah.
Communism doesn't work, folks.
Lincoln will have, this is wild to think about. Lincoln will have lived closer to the detonation of the first nuclear bomb than people born after 2025.
Well, that's weird.
That's weird. All right, I got one more shower thought. How many more you got?
A few. You can steal some of mine since I stole one of yours.
Okay.
I'm going to skip my second one because it's just not funny.
Okay.
This one I did like, though. I thought about this if I was depressed and thinking about how we're not making progress right now. We do not have a good grasp on just how much humanity can progress in a lifetime. In a single lifetime, we went from the first flying machines to putting a man on the moon. And in the next lifetime, we went from room-sized computers to ones we carry in our pocket that are incomprehensibly faster.
Very true. Yeah. It's this type of progression that you wouldn't have expected in different ways, right? Yeah, that's wild. All right. Antibiotics sound like something you take to keep yourself from turning into a robot.
It's true. I bet that becomes a thing.
Right?
Like, someday when it's like the norm to get your eyes replaced with like biotic eyes and stuff, like now we call them anti-vaxxers, but I bet in the future it's going to be antibiotics.
Ooh, yeah. That's wild. Yeah, that's a wild one.
A coma is a free trial of the afterlife, and when it expires, you either pay for the full version or you get back to life.
I love that. I love this okay, this is the last shower thought, guys. I love this one. If you choke on a piece of meat, it's an animal's last chance at revenge. Yeah.
Or person. Depends.
Yeah, or person. Yeah. What is it? What was that? The podcast we did about those people. The
Cannibals?
Oh, yeah, the cannibal people. What was the name of those people?
Cannibals?
No, the name of the people, like their last names.
I don't. Oh, yes. The Donner Party.
The Donners, you Donners. Yeah. Yes,
No, it's
that's
for
awesome.
survival. That's different.
That's hilarious.
Their problem was they
guys.
waited way too long to eat the people. There wasn't enough meat left.
Yeah, that's true. That's fascinating perspective.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, guys.
Wah,
Wah, wah. All right, guys. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We hope you have a fantastic week. Stay cool out there. Keep your AC going because it's supposed to get to 100 degrees this weekend, which is in bananas.
Like it.
And we hope you have a fantastic week. We will as well.
And some of you will
Peace
see
out, guys. Appreciate you.
in just a moment.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Bye.